Good morning. You are now tuned in to the Thinking Outside the Box podcast of yours truly, the Algo Capitalist, aka the Vulcan, coming to you live from PulseWaveTrading.com, home of the world famous Pulse Wave Price Trigger reports. All right, so it's Tuesday, June the 6th, 2023. It's another day, it's another week. And we've been documenting the state of collapse, if you will. Now, I know what you're going to say. I know what you're thinking. There is no collapse. The documentary of 2016 said so. You're right. It's not a collapse in the generic sense of the word or the organic sense of the word. This is something that is manufactured, and manufactured crises serve only one purpose, and that is to give absolute power and absolute control to the elite. And that's what we're faced with right now. So you have a situation where the US government has agreed to raise the debt ceiling, which means they're pouring more fuel on the fire. Instead of putting out the fire with water, or in some cases where they let a structure burn itself out without doing anything to it, they decided they were going to add more fuel to the fire. They were going to add accelerant. They were going to spray lighter fluid all over the fire with fire hoses, and also fill the fire hoses with kerosene and other accelerants. And they're saying, see, this is how you put out a fire. If you want to put out a fire, you got to add fire to the fire, make it burn even brighter, and then it burns itself out. That's the philosophy that they're using with the economy. Now, you don't have to be a mathematician or an economist or an accountant to understand the flaw and the error in this way of thinking. They want you to believe that the laws of physics that govern the universe, or even the laws of economics, the principles of economics and finance, need not apply when it comes to the federal government. As if the federal government is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent and can suspend the laws that govern the universe on a whim, and that these things don't affect them because they are omnipotent. Well, you and I both know that is not the case. That is not true at all. The federal government is not omnipotent or omniscient or omnipresent, even though it likes to believe that it is. The government believes that it's smarter than you, the people. The government believes that it has a divine right to lord over you. Your government believes that all of your inalienable rights that are given to you by God, they believe they have control over that, and that they are your God, and that your allegiance is to them first and only them. And that is the road that the country is going down, where the government is in control of every aspect of life, to the point that you can't even live your life without going through or dealing with them either directly or indirectly. That is the course that the ship is sailing down. Now, some of you don't believe this. You think this is just hyperbole. You think this is an exaggeration of facts, or a statement lacking facts altogether. But you know how we do. We take a look at things from a historical perspective, and we bring it up to the present. And we just observe what we can see, what we can understand, things that are right in front of us. And we are able to draw conclusions based on these facts, these truths. Now, all truths being parallel, we have a lot of historical precedent for what we understand that is happening in our physical world. It's not like we're going through a dark chasm blindly without a flashlight. No, we have plenty of light and we know exactly what is before us because it's not something that organically happened. It's something that was foretold that was going to happen. And for all intents and purposes, it is something that is being made to happen. So we're going to take a look at the different sides and angles of the current situation. We're going to look at the economy. We're going to look at civil rights. We're going to look at the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We're going to look at a lot of different things. Now, believe it or not, the majority of freedoms fall under the banner of free speech because free speech is what enables you to demand your inalienable rights. Free speech gives you the ability to obtain your rights. You can speak out against injustices. You can speak up for yourself in a court of law. The ability of speech is impossible within a civilized society to be unutilized. You cannot not communicate when you leave your house. The different forms of communication or speech. There's the verbal kind, like I'm doing right now. You can hear my audible voice through the miracle of technology. There's written speech, where instead of using voice, I can pen all of my words that I want to communicate. I can do this in the form of a sticky note. I can do it on loose leaf paper. I can put it in a format of a book and add book binding to it, paperback, hard copy. I can put it in an email. I can put it in the form of a text. I can skywrite it. I can make it into a movie or some sort of video. There are innumerable ways to communicate and use speech. Speech is not something that the government gives you, it's something you're born with. When you come out of the womb, you have the ability to make sound, unless there is some medical malady that is preventing you from doing so. The normal course of things is that when you come out of the womb, you are able to vocalize and make sounds and communicate. Infants communicate even though their speech is not fully understandable because they are gurgling and cooing and crying and yelling and screaming. But they are, in effect, communicating when they do those things. For those of you who are listening, you who have children, who are parents, you over time began to be able to discern the different sounds that your infant made. You knew the cry that meant they were hungry. There was a hungry cry. There was a restless cry. There was a I've soiled myself cry. Different types of cries would mean different things. For those of you pet owners who have dogs, you know dogs have different types of barks. You know the bark of excitement when the dog is happy. You know the bark of intruder alert, something is not right bark. And all these sounds are different. And we learn to discern these things because we have the power of speech. And with speech and communication, there is understanding. So, speech is paramount. Being able to communicate with those around you is paramount if you are to have anything to do with the modern society where you find yourself. Doesn't matter what continent you're on. It doesn't matter what your nationality is. The primal course is to be able to communicate with those around you, to be able to share ideas and concepts and theories and various hypotheses. Communication is an everyday occurrence. You will not go a day in a modern society when you're not communicating in some form or fashion. The ability to express oneself is also a God given right because our Heavenly Father communicates. He communicates with us in various ways and has communicated with us in the past and has even left us a rather lengthy communication that we call the Bible. So communication is paramount. You have to be able to communicate, whether it's sign language or whatever. You have to be able to communicate. And it is wrong to take away a sovereign right of communication. To tell a person they cannot say or speak thus and so, you put yourself in the form of God when you try to take away speech or limit expression, freedom of expression. Now, of course, for every reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So, although we understand that we have the freedom of expression and the right to communicate our thoughts and ideas with others, we also accept the fact that for every word that is uttered, there will be words that are uttered back to us. Because again, every action has an opposite and equal reaction. So, being able to read the room, being able to understand your audience is also paramount. It's important because if you do not know how to communicate with your said audience, then you will lose that said audience, meaning that they won't be able to follow your train of thought. And based on the cultures and the place where you are, you may offend people accidentally, not on purpose, because you didn't understand the culture and you didn't understand that in this particular culture we don't use that word or that word because it is a historical fact that in this particular society, in this particular culture, in their particular language, these words have those meanings. So that's why you never hear them use those words. So you have to know where you are. You never want to purposely offend anyone. Okay. At least not to the point of shock or outrage and anger. Some lower forms of offense are necessary. All right, like the Scared Stiff program, where they would bring the troubled youths to the local jail or prison, and it was a part of the inmates program. Only certain inmates could be qualified for to be and work in the program. Whether the students would come and they would scare them straight and make them never ever 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 want to do anything on purpose that would get them sent to such a place. So in that regard, a mild amount of offense was necessary to get one's point across. So sometimes offense cannot be avoided because it is necessary to get one's point across and to make things clear with emphasis. Like there's a way to say one sentence in several different ways. Some ways would offend, other ways would actually encourage. an equal happy response. I've done this example before, but for those that are unfamiliar, I'll do it again for you now. So, for those that have spouses, you can relate to this. Those of you who don't, you can still relate to it on a different level. So, case in point, all right. So I say to my wife, um, could you please hand me the remote? And she would surely hand me the remote. You know, I gave a speech in a certain way, and it was given back to me the same way I gave it, right? That's a pleasant reaction. It was a non offensive reaction. But I can say the same sentence again. Honey, can you please hand me the remote? Same words, different tone. Now, what type of reaction do you think is going to come with that particular speech? I can tell you, more than likely, she would still hand me the remote, except for in the first scenario, she handed me the remote and put it in my hand. In the second scenario, she still handed me the remote, but it came to me in the form of an aerial assault because she threw it at my head. See this? You see what I'm saying? See the difference? So communication and speech is paramount, but you have to know what to say, how to say it, and when to say it. All right. Not all speech is a good idea in certain situations. Some words, some things should be spoken in and out of season, while others should not. In the middle of a funeral for a well beloved person in a packed theater, you would not say, "Oh well, person's dead. Hey, who's up for some drinks at the bar? Let's go." You wouldn't do that. Why wouldn't you do that? Because it's offensive. You're in the middle of a funeral for a well beloved person. The parlor is packed. People are weeping and sobbing. And you jump up in the middle of the floor and say, "Okay, the person's dead. Let's move on. Anyone want drinks? Follow me to the bar." You wouldn't do that because you would offend everyone in there. They're grieving. They're weeping. They're not thinking about anything else but the loss of this dear loved one. But now, in another example, I can say the same sentence to the same people in a different way at a different time and get a different reaction. If I'd have waited until after the ceremony, and now we're back at the place where you're having your repast and you're eating food and everyone's talking and sharing stories. After a while, I could say, "All right, we're gonna be heading over to the bar, get some drinks afterwards. Does anyone want to come?" You will probably get a much lighter response, and maybe even a lot of yeses. But it's when you drop that same sentence. You didn't change a word, same sentence, but different reaction because of the timing of it. Why am I saying all this? Because again, freedom of speech and expression are paramount, to which all other rights and liberties flow. If you cannot communicate yourself, then you really cannot lay hold of a lot of rights and freedoms because you cannot plead one's case or make one's claim. If you can't communicate, then you can't really function in the free society. Again, freedom of speech is paramount. I don't have to like what you are communicating. I can simply ignore you. If you're writing books that I deem to be hostile or offensive, well, I don't have to read your books. No one's making me read your book. It's not like I'm taking some college course and this was required reading. That's a different scope, a different situation. We're just talking about in general. I don't like your book. I don't like any of your books. I'm not reading them. Therefore, I'm not offended because I don't have to read your books. I am free to read whatever I want, whenever I want. It's a choice. I don't want to read your book because I don't like your book, and that's okay. What do we call that when a person has a right to choose? Well, technically speaking, in its raw, rarest form, that is bigotry because you have a preference of one thing over the other. It is a bigoted response, right? That's what it means. It means that you are free to choose, and that is your right to choose. I like this flavor over that flavor of ice cream. It doesn't make me racist, but it does make me bigoted because I'm biased toward the flavor that I like, and I disregard the flavors I don't like, and I'm free to do that. It doesn't matter if that offends anyone or not. It is my right to like a certain type of ice cream. You dig what I'm saying? So, freedom of speech is important. And even if I don't like your message, I don't have to listen. I don't like this particular movie director. I don't like the films he has directed, he or she. Therefore, I will not watch these films. No one is making me watch the films. I could care less. I don't think people are grasping the gravity of the subject matter of communications and freedom of speech and freedom of expression. It's almost as if American society has been successfully programmed to the government's agenda to the point where any ideology that goes against the deep ingrained programming from one's youth, you automatically reject it, or it causes you to turn off or to melt down, to tune out, where you can't even entertain opposite ideas or thoughts or expressions without it having a negative effect on your being. You don't have to like or agree with the Ku Klux Klan's doctrine. However, under freedom of speech and freedom of expression, they should be allowed to exist and have their little meetings and services, whatever they do, without it affecting you. It doesn't affect you. They're not touching you. They're not harming you. No one's bothering you. No one's accosting you in the parking lot. You are a non-factor. You don't have to agree with the ideology. You don't have to agree with the doctrines and beliefs held. That is their right to have it and express those. It is none of my business, and I should not be a busybody and go to the local authorities and say, I know where a local Ku Klux Klan meeting is taking place right now. Go do something about that. Why? They have a freedom of assembly, they have freedom of speech, and they have freedom of expression. And if they want to pay the county a bag of money to go hold a march and a parade and march down the street, that is their right to do so. I don't have to show up and watch the parade. I can go on about my business. Why are you offended? Why are you bothered by their existence? They have a right of expression and freedom of expression and freedom of assembly, just like you do. So if they hold their march today and then you hold one next week with the opposite of that, that's your right. Freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, freedom of speech. You should defend everyone's right to freedom of speech and freedom of expression, because the day that you don't is the day that everyone loses the freedom of speech and freedom of right of expression and freedom of assembly. Do you get that now? If you take it away from one person, you've de facto taken it away from everyone. You've now set a precedent that you don't have any longer free speech, freedom of expression, or right of assembly. So when you see people being taken off of social media platforms because someone doesn't like what they're saying or doesn't agree with their hypothesis or their theories, So what? Leave that person alone. They have a right to exist like you do. You have a right to bring counter arguments of why you don't hold those beliefs or why you don't believe in this or that. And that's fine. We call that the marketplace of ideas, where we all come together and we can share our beliefs and ideas. You can share what you believe and why you believe it. That's what adults are supposed to do. Be able to communicate. We can debate until the cows come home, and then agree to disagree, and then go out and drink a beer together. No harm, no foul. That's the way it's supposed to be. You tell me what you believe and why you believe it. I share what I believe and why I believe it. We agree or we or disagree. If you have an open mind, you may be like, you know what? I never considered this, or I never thought about it like that. You've given me something to think about and to consider. Another person says the same thing. I never understood that part. I'm glad you explained that the way you did. Now I see things differently, and that. Well, I'm glad we had this conversation. I'm glad we had this debate. When you leave from the marketplace of ideas, you're supposed to leave enriched. Now you have deeper understanding of other peoples and languages and customs and religions and political affiliations. That's what we do when we come together and communicate with one another and share ideas and concepts. That's what we're doing. We're equipping and encouraging one another, and we're expanding our learning of our environment, of our world. If all you did was speak to people who were only like-minded, you would never be able to broaden your horizons, because you're only speaking to people that are like-minded. Nothing wrong with that. That's a great thing to do, because there's camaraderie and encouragement in that. But if you never get outside of that and go over here and learn what ABC Group is doing, then you won't ever understand ABC Group. And whatever understanding you think you have is going to be stereotypes and false information, because you never sat down with ABC Group and got to learn and understand them. You never traveled to their country and say, I'm going to spend some time here. I want to get to know this people group. I'm curious about them. I've always thought about it. I always wanted to know what this was like. I'm going to go, and I'm going to explain that I'm here to learn and see if they'll accept me, and if I can sit down and learn about them, because I want to be able to understand this people group. But no, 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 not in America. No way. Hey, you're a Democrat. I'm a Republican. We're not supposed to be seen together in public. We're not supposed to talk. You hate me, I hate you. And have you ever stopped just to think just how silly this all is? But also, have you noticed the parallels? The Democrats are blue. The Crips are blue. The Republicans are red. The Bloods are red. Very interesting how, when you break it down from the grassroots of society, the people groups are divided in the same way. And all these different divisions in some such situations bring about hostilities that are unnecessary. Because again, if all of our goals are aligned, there really should be no hostilities, because you should be able to understand the other side and be able to find meeting grounds, places where you all agree. And there's nothing wrong with agreeing to disagree either. Everyone's not going to like everyone. Everyone's not going to be your friend. And that's okay too. But that shouldn't come with hostility. It should not come with hostility. Okay, so this person here is of another religion. So now I'm supposed to not like that person because they have another religious belief system? That's ridiculous. Instead of having preconceived notions about them, why don't you learn about what it is that they believe and see how it differs from what you believe? And that now you can understand this person better and their belief systems better. So guess what? In doing that and sitting down and talking and communicating with people, not only do you get to broaden your horizons and learn things that you don't know, but you may even develop a friendship out of it. You may gain a friend out of that. You just never know. But if you go around judging people and you have really no basis for your judgment, then it's nothing more than ignorance. That's what it is. It's ignorance. So freedom of speech, freedom of expression is paramount in a free society. It's how you're able to communicate. It's how you're able to express your God-given rights and exercise your freedoms. But in the United States of America, which is now operating as a failed state, it's a falling empire, an empire that is in the state of collapse. We have the opposite of this. We're living in the modern day 1984 / Fahrenheit 451. This country that you have woken up to this morning is quickly becoming unrecognizable. Did you ever, in your wildest thoughts, ever think that in the United States of America, that one day in your lifetime, the national anthem, the Bible, and the Christian faith are all considered to be highly offensive in America? You can understand hostility toward the Bible and the Christian faith. That's a guarantee, even in scripture. You're guaranteed that this is going to be an outcome. But the country's own national anthem is now considered offensive to the nation of people? Bizarre, world is where we are. We live in an upside down society with completely upside down values. Now, in this sort of an environment, literally anything that you say could get you into serious trouble. Theoretically, the U.S. Constitution is supposed to guarantee the right of free speech for everyone. But the truth is that free speech has been dead for quite some time now. Those that are in the process of fundamentally transforming the United States society have made policing speech one of their highest priorities. It's not balancing the budget. That's not the highest priority. No. Policing speech is now the highest priority. And there are hordes of brainwashed minions that follow, and they're always ready to step in and crack down whenever a potential violation has been detected. The thought crimes police are alive and well, ladies and gentlemen. So at this point, things have gotten so bad that even children singing the national anthem is considered to be offensive. That's right. An unbelievable case of censorship took place when the esteemed Rushing Brook Children's Choir was silenced by Capitol Police in the nation's capital, in the middle of singing the national anthem at the United States Capitol, despite having prior approval from Congress members. The police deemed their performance as a form of protest, sparking outrage and concern among citizens and lawmakers. The Rushing Brook Children's Choir had been granted permission to perform in Statuary Hall by South Carolina Representatives Russell Fry, Joe Wilson, and William Timmons during their well-planned trip to Washington, D.C. The audience and the young singers were bewildered as their rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner was abruptly halted for seemingly baseless reasons. Now, according to the police, singing the national anthem could be considered offensive or provoke conflict. Are you serious? We can't have little children singing the national anthem because it could be considered offensive or provoke conflict? What in the world has happened to the United States of America? It turns out that the Bible is now considered to be offensive as well. In fact, the King James Version of the Bible was just banned at the elementary school level and the middle school level by a school district in Utah. The King James Version of the Bible has been removed from many Davis School District schools after a committee found it contained vulgarity and violence. A district review committee recently decided to pull the Bible from all schools other than at the high school level. According to a district spokesperson, the committee actually determined the book does not contain sensitive material as defined by Utah code, but still pulled it from certain schools because of age appropriateness. Utah is supposedly one of the most conservative states in the entire country. If the Bible is going to get banned there, it's just a matter of time before it's banned in school districts from coast to coast. It's a slippery slope, folks. A very slippery slope. But this shouldn't surprise anyone. The Christian faith stands in direct opposition to the new culture, and the elites are relentlessly trying to impose on all of us. And so the Christian faith must be suppressed. Just recently, Bill Hollowell of CBN News posted Jesus died so you could live on Facebook. And he was informed by Facebook that this statement violated the community standards on hate speech. You know, it's interesting because you would assume when you get this alert pop up that says you violated hate speech paradigms, that you've said something horrible. Hollowell told Charisma News' John Matarizzo in a recent interview. So here's what I wrote, and I wrote this on April the 2nd. I think that's important because it was a 40-day period that elapsed from the time that I get this alert. I wrote, Jesus died so you could live. That is the message that I wrote. There's no link. It was just Jesus died so you could live. And that is what prompted this response from Facebook. And that response, just so you understand, I'm on the phone. I see it on my phone. I see it on the desktop. At first, I thought maybe it was a mistake. It was a joke. I'm like, what is this? I got this alert. It said your post goes against our community standards on hate speech. That has to be a mistake, right? That is what Hollowell thought. And so he asked Facebook for a review. Unfortunately, even after the review, Hollowell's statement was still deemed to be hate speech. It only took a couple of hours for Facebook to review the post, and it was immediately removed from Hollowell's page. I laugh because it's so ridiculous, Hollowell said. So I get another alert which says, we have removed your post from Facebook. So this is a new alert now. Then it says, and this is the best part about this, they removed it even from the preview. So you no longer see the message that was a problem. It says post unavailable and that they've unable to show the content. Then there's a little section on this alert that says what happened. It says your appeal was reviewed and your post does not follow our community standards for hate speech. So we're back to the hate speech again. If I cannot even tell you that Jesus died so that you could live, what sort of society are we becoming? At this stage, we're not too far behind communist China, where Christians are literally thrown in prison for what they believe. The U.S. government on Monday accused Beijing of jailing as many as 10,000 or more people in 2022 in a widening campaign of repression against religious belief meant to bring all theological activity under the Chinese Communist Party's control. The estimate of those imprisoned in the country, ranging from the law thousands to over 100,000, is one of many accusations contained in the State Department's International Religious Freedom Report, which has been published annually since 1999 and covers nearly 200 countries. Now, the report section on China draws on reports by human rights advocacy groups, including Freedom House and religious groups like the Church of Almighty God, or CAG, as well as public information from the Chinese government. We have reached a time in U.S. history when control over what you say and what you believe is going to become increasingly restrictive. The United States government is hell bent on the society becoming rapidly the exact opposite of what the founders intended. And previous generations of Americans would vomit all over the place if they could see what we have done to the nation that sacrificed so much. America is being transformed into America right in front of our eyes, and none of our lives will ever be the same. And these are facts. There's nowhere around it. These things are happening. The nation is collapsing emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, economically, structurally. That's all you see is collapse. Just something to think about as we're moving forward. You can't make this up, even if you tried. This is reality. This has become life, and it's not going to stop. It's only going to get worse because those that are in power, the unelected officials is what I'm talking about, are the ones that are controlling what the elected officials do. The elected officials no longer respond to the wants and needs of their constituents. No, they work for their overlords. Their true master is the one that got them elected in the first place with all the campaign money. And those are the industrial complexes that run the United States government, which are all associated in one way or another with the secret societies. The United States is the only nation on earth that is governed so. All right, folks, that's all I got for you today. You know, I like to keep these short and sweet. Just something for you to chew on, something to think about as time is moving forward at a rapid rate. And there are a lot of other things that need to be addressed, and there's just not enough time in the day to do it. So I do what little I can. So be encouraged. Smash that like button, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I'm out. Peace.